Hello, and thank you for watching. On today's episode, we'll be making this useful and rugged workbench. I found a good overall size, and to make things easier, I did 2 feet deep and 6 feet long. Height depends on how tall you are, so that one could be up in the air as far as what you would like. Typical counter height is usually around 36 inches, but you can do any size you want. I did 38. To maximize strength, I used 6 foot long 2x6s for the top part of the workbench and 6 foot long 2x4s for the second bottom shelf. You can do it as you please. I'm using these two 2x4s to mark off the space that will be taken out by the ends when you put the ends on to make the total top width exactly 6 feet by 2 feet. You can use any method that works best for you. I chose this one for maximum strength. Using both new pieces of wood and some scrap pieces of wood, I decided to put the center braces every foot to maximize the strength of the countertop of the workbench. Although it's a wooden workbench, it will have extreme strength enough to do hammering on top of. Once you have your parts all laid out, you can go ahead and start to assemble your workbench. After the top and the shelf are all cut, you can go ahead and cut the legs. I chose to do 38 inches. You can do less or more depending on how tall you are. You can also use 4x4s for even added strength. I thought 2x4s in this arrangement would be strong enough. So go ahead and cut them, and then apply either woodworker's glue or construction adhesive to the top to give it extra rigidity. And also I chose to use screws because they won't bounce out like nails tend to do after they've been hammered on repeatedly. But you can use nails if that's all you have. Also, screws are less likely to crack the wood if you pre-drill them, and even if you don't, they're less likely to crack the wood than a heavy-duty nail would. Try to use a large square to make sure that your tabletop is square. That way it looks better and functions better and doesn't wobble on the floor. If you have somebody nearby who's not busy, it's best to ask them to help you with this part of the build. It's always nice to have a helping hand to hold boards while you're trying to put them together. Lucky for me, my father stepped in to check on progress and was able to lend me a hand, or a foot in this case, to hold the boards while I got the last ones screwed together. Once you have the top of the table assembled and check that everything is plumb and square, then you can get ready to install the legs. I know many people don't like to take time to use the square and level to make these things on point because they think it doesn't really matter, but at this point it really is crucial, otherwise you'll have a wobbly table and that's no fun. So take your time to make sure they're as square as possible. Sometimes your floor isn't level, so you have to adjust for that. Here I'm putting screws in from every possible angle to maximize the strength. Some people will choose to use lag screws or bolts to even farther maximize the strength of their workbench. You can do it as you see fit. It always helps to have a quick grip adjustable clamp, or even the old school screw kinds, to help hold the board steady for you while you get the first screws in. After the top is completed with the legs attached, then you can decide on what height to build your shelf. You could even do 2 shelves if you like. I chose to do 1 to allow for the placement of larger tools. Start with one end, make the other end level, and go ahead and drill it in. Once you find the level point, you can go ahead and measure it from the floor up, so that way on the other side it matches this side. Once again, put screws on both sides to maximize the strength. As you see, I marked it with a screw, held it in with a clamp, and attached it to the side. Leveled it again, and did the other corner. Then I grabbed my 6 foot 2x4, applied some glue, and hooked it onto the back side for the table. Also, take note, if you didn't do before, I staggered the direction of the legs in order to maximize the strength. The 2 in the front go forward and the 2 in the back are flat. This will also allow room for your legs so you don't bang your shin. That is why I put this 2x4 on the inside of the leg and not on the outside of the table. It'll give just that much room so you don't bang your shins while you're working on any project with the workbench. Then go ahead and place your inserts in, marking them evenly every foot, or you can do every 2 feet if you like. Once again, the more you do, the stronger the table will be. Just blow the glue in there and go ahead and screw them in. This is purely optional. I'm using 3/4 inch plywood, which is pretty strong by itself, but by doing this I find that when you hammer on the table it doesn't bounce. I had tables in the workbenches in the past that have bounced and I didn't like that, so I wanted to make this one feel like it was almost like hammering on like concrete or even metal or steel plate or something. So now I'm just giving a little rough sanding on the top to make sure everything is perfectly level, nothing major here. And I'm going to get my sheet of plywood. I already cut it to 6 feet to make it easier to carry, but now I'm going to cut it to 2 feet for the top. Use a chalk line to make your line straight as possible. Clamp it down if you want somebody to hold it for you. Wear safety glasses and go ahead and cut that board, checking that you're keeping it at a straight line. Line it up, apply some glue. It's again optional, but I find that it does help. In this case, construction adhesive, and line up again, and go ahead and screw it in with 1 1/4 to 1.5 inch screws. I'm using deck screws so that if it doesn't get wet or any kind of chemical gets on it, it won't rust, because nobody likes rust. But you can even just use drywall screws. The other advantage of using the construction adhesive is that you can use a lot less screws. And less screws means less indentations or holes on top of your working surface. Less chances for splintering to happen or for dirt to build up. So I put a good amount of screws on the outside just to hold it down at first, spacing them every about 10 inches or so, and a couple in the middle to give it more strength. You can do whatever pattern suits you. I accidentally deleted the clip where I cut the wood for the shelf, but it's just the same thing. It's a little smaller because the shelf will still be 6 feet long, but it'll be minus a couple inches since the board is on the inside, not on the outside. So measure that and make sure you cut out the corners where the 2x4's legs are. Then you're pretty much done. As an option, I decided to stain mine to give it a nice look because I had some stain laying around. And then I clear coated it with some polyurethane, some oil-based, which is stronger than the water-based, but it can be very messy. It went on pretty thick, but when it dried, it was very smooth, but it was not slippery. I was surprised. And it looks beautiful and should hold up well. It's completely optional, but as you can see, this is what it looks like when it is done. A beautiful, high-class workbench, I call it. I think this is actually still wet, so don't judge the top yet, but I'll have to get a picture of it later for you. And see the shelf below? It fits just perfectly. I want to thank you for subscribing and checking out my other build videos. Some other recent projects are building this mega shed project, which this workshop is located inside of, building a homemade hoop house greenhouse, also known as a polytunnel, building a mini metal foundry forge to melt metals in, as well as many other build projects and unrelated fun videos and tutorials. I also have a cooking page called Culinary Creations, but it's just under the same Living the Good Life Now YouTube page. So feel free to check that out too. Once again, thank you for watching. This is Living the Good Life Now. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to voice them in the comment section. I take time to personally read and respond to every question.